Anybody can make $1 million a year in sales. People said, go to school to make a lot of money. I was 14 being like, wait, this is all a lie.
The opportunity in sales can be 10 times, 20 times that of a doctor.
Sales has completely changed. Even in the last 3 years, people like and trust people that show that they're listening.
People can quickly identify that in literally minutes. I used to think sales were sleazy.
Don't pay me a dime. Sometimes just go through my profiles and you can find tactics, and that's what I build my profile up for. Make your goal people. Don't make your goal just money. This is such a good time to build a brand. If you're gonna build a brand off real value, you will eventually stand out.
Can you talk about that? Because I think that is the differentiator between these guys who are making millions and the guys who are like literally struggling.
You will always be heavily paid for the...
So I believe that sales and leadership can help you dominate everything in business, life, all that. And that's what today's episode is going to be about. Today I have a really special guest. It's Daniel G. He took the time to be with us today. And if you guys don't know Daniel, he runs a massive sales agency in Canada. He's also one of the world's top sales experts, speaks on some of the biggest stages. I heard like you did 560 events so far in your career. And I just see you helping people on the biggest stages and just making a big impact in the sales community. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I know that sales is your game and we can really help people with today's episode.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here, man. So I just want to get straight into it, man. I think, with sales, I used to think sales were sleazy. You know what I mean? Like everybody has this opinion of sales. And, but then I saw how when I got into business, I saw how people are so reluctant to make a decision. Like they just are they're their own worst enemy. And so what I really learned about sales is like how we can guide people and get them out of their own way. And so if you have a really good product or service to offer, like sales is almost essential. Being really good at sales is essential. So kind of wanted to get into, why sales, in terms of like, why do you love sales and why do you continue to just be so passionate about it?
For me personally, it's not something nobody really chooses. Sales is not like a choice, like you've probably fell back inside of sales. I fell back inside of sales. So when I grew up, I always say sales was the one thing that like allowed me to be free and operate the way I want to operate and just find people like me that like chatting with me, my own personality types, etc. Because you're not right for every single prospect. Like I'm not right for every single prospect,
Yeah.
It's the way you want to communicate with people. And to me, I fell into sales when I was 14 years old, without choice. I mean, my parents broke up and I found my first sales job. There was a sign when I was walking down in my high school. It's like, if you want to make $500 to $1,000 in commission, sign up here. I didn't even know what commissions was. I just signed up to the sign and I started my first direct door-to-door sales job, right? There was no salary. It was direct door-to-door sales. And my first weekend, I made $800 in commissions and I was sold. My brain can never go back. Yeah. And because, people said, go to school to make a lot of money. And then right there was a flaw in the messaging because I said, well, shit, I've already figured this money thing out. So what do they mean? I was 14 at the time having this light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Some people have the light bulb moment when they're 35. I was 14 being like, wait, this is all a lie. I can make a lot of money in sales just knocking on doors. So that's how I got inside of my sales career. And I think sales just has a negative connotation because you're not taught inside of the school system. So what's ever not taught inside of the school system, people are going to, say it's going to be an anomaly to people. You're not taught how to communicate and sell when you're in grade 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when you get out, majority of people, it's funny. I was just saying this to a friend. I'm like, majority of people end up in a sales job. Just majority of people end up quitting it because you're not programmed to think it's a lifelong lasting career. We're not taught real estate, insurance sales, mortgage sales, anything like that. But it's like everybody sold something. When you were in school, I was saying this to my friends last week. I said, man, do you remember selling those chocolates?
Yeah.
Like just for charity, we sold freaking chocolates. And I'm like, everybody did well. You'd come home with an empty box of chocolates. But nobody would ever encourage us to be like, oh man, you're a great communicator, whatever the case is. So I just think everything's from your childhood programming, right? So you can never really outperform what you've been programmed to be when you were young. So to me, I just say, hey, a lot of people, they never go to their full potential because they don't see it as a career, number one. And I said the second thing is I think why it has a negative connotation is because, hey, a lot of people get it and a lot of people quit. A lot of people quit because the barrier to entry inside of a sales job is not that high. So it's like, for real estate, let's just say maybe for real estate, you got to spend a few $1,000s, get your license, etc. We're not talking about the car, the marketing or anything like that. But inside of your head that you didn't spend 10 years inside of school, spend $100,000. So if the cost to entry is low, like that's people put their respect on a profession based on how much time they spent to get in, or usually how much they paid to get inside.
Yeah.
So then usually if the negative is it accepts everybody. And because it accepts everybody, people know that when they get inside of sales, so they don't treat it like an actual profession.
Yeah.
And you can see this through salespeople's daily methods of operations, you know, the way they follow up with people, the way they treat their business, if they have CRMs, the way they're organized. A doctor that makes over six figures a year, 150,000, 250,000, you could see they treat it like a business. Their assistant follows up with you 2 to 3 times before you come inside of an appointment. If they don't hear back from you, they'll cancel the slot, they'll put somebody in. They operate it like a business because the doctor paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to get their degree and thousands of dollars to open up the clinic and the practice, right? So yeah, I think it's a barrier to entry sometimes that makes it a little bit hard for people to stay.
And then what's crazy is I think like if we flip this around, the people should be valuing it based on the opportunity. You've talked about this a lot. Like, so yeah, I guess you pay a lot to
on
get
the
that
potential of what it has.
Correct. Yeah. The opportunity in sales can be 10 times, 20 times that of a doctor.
Correct.
I mean, we've seen multi-millionaires in sales, right? In all different industries.
Yeah.
And so yes, the barrier is low, but the opportunity can be massive. I think like we should treat it with respect based on, I think people should just generally think like, okay, how much is the opportunity here? That's how much support and, you know, and that's how much education I should go.
Yeah. And it's unlimited.
Yes.
It's uncapped, right? So I think that's the most beautiful part about sales is that there's no cap to it. I always say like the most encouraging and motivating thing for anybody that's inside of sales is that you have unlimited opportunity to make as much money as you want. In majority of professions, like you can't have that. You can't work harder to make more money. Like in sales, the number one motivating factor is that you can't tap out and you can make uncapped commissions. And if that doesn't motivate somebody, then sales is probably not the right profession for that individual.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's like you get this kind of high off of closing that first deal.
Or
selling those, whatever that thing was in the beginning. And then from there, like you're chasing that feeling again and again. So I noticed a lot of people in sales, like obviously we're going to get into some tactics here in a minute, but like just getting your mind right about like, hey, this is a massive opportunity. If you're not in sales and you're watching this, like, hey, you should consider like, obviously if you're not getting fulfillment and you're not getting excitement from your day-to-day job, like this is where it's at in terms of chasing that feeling of like, you know, and you talk a lot about this, the energy, enthusiasm that you bring to it. Like, can you talk really quickly before we get into tactics about like the momentum? Because I noticed like you're doing things nonstop, always going. And so
I always try to tell people it's like the worst thing to ever do is try to get in momentum. It's like you don't want to get in, you want to stay in momentum. Because some people are like, man, how do I get back in momentum? I'm like, well, why did you get out of it? Like you should have just stayed in momentum. You should always identify the things that take you out of momentum, not how to get back inside. Like what are the things that take you out of it? It's like you don't try to identify what makes you successful. It's like what you don't do to become successful. It's not always what you do to become successful. It's like you look at when I was young, people would ask me, I got my first nice Lamborghini. I was 24 and a half. And you know you're young when you use half. So I was 24 and a half. I'm driving a cool car. I'm a cool kid inside of my city. Everybody come up to you, like, you know this. People come up to you and they ask you, what do you do for a living, right? And I'm 24 and I'm telling them, at this time, I didn't even have my business. I was in medical sales. And I would tell people, I'm like, oh, I'm a sales rep, like I'm medical sales. And they would look at you and be like, this guy a drug dealer or something?
Yeah.
And I'd look at myself, I'd be like, wait, but I'm in sales. Like you can make a shit ton of money and a Lamborghini is nothing. What's a lease payment? $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. I'm like, this is nothing if you're making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month inside of sales. But everybody would look at you and be like, come on, what else? And then I would say, the question is not what do you do, it's what you don't do. So people should be asking, hey bro, what didn't you do to get this car while you were in sales? Because anybody can make $1 million a year in sales. It's just what they do with their commissions, what they do when they start making a little bit of money, how much they feel like they're worth if they could keep on going, if they could stay in momentum, what gets them out of momentum. It's like there's so many things inside of my career that I decided and chose not to do while I was making money that got me to the point to where I got to.
Yeah, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
So instead of just being like, what's the tactic? What's the hack? It's like, what do you probably have to kill inside of your life before you come committed inside of sales? I was just saying this on a live stream. I'm like, when you make a commitment to something, any industry, a real commitment indicates that you're probably going to have to kill something in the past, which majority of people are always trying to find the new hack. I'm committed to this. Yeah, but the negative habit will always suffocate the positive habit inside of business. So you can go to the gym, but if you go to the gym and you smoke a pack of cigarettes or eat McDonald's every single day, the strategy is useless which is the gym. The negative habit suffocates it, right? So I always say my energy thing is like always identifying what and who takes me off track. Instead of trying to identify what's going to get me inside of momentum.
Yeah, because we're our own worst enemy, right?
Correct.
Like, so I think of the negative things that you're doing can keep you from this. I notice a lot of people, they're just like, I was talking about how we can, as salespeople, guide people to the best outcomes. Well, that's everybody in sales too, I noticed. Like they can't get out of their own way. They're always looking for the next thing, but their way of thinking, their energy, even just like when somebody feels like too needy, you know what I mean? Like you just feel the energy, and you could be like, dude, I could give you the lines, the objection handlers, the objection preventers, like all that shit, but just the way you are is preventing you from everything. You know what I mean? That's a tough thing to address.
I think what I train salespeople on is like knowing that you're always going to be okay if you just stick with your guns, you skip. Because when people don't know that they're going to be good regardless, when they don't have that inside of their head, they're always going to lean on a prospect, right? And the moment the prospect knows you need them, they don't need you anymore inside of sales. So a lot of traditional sales training actually, it shows the salesperson trying to lean into the prospect. Like I do a lot of trainings when it's like objection handling. And when objection comes in, if a salesperson starts saying things like, yeah, but what are you not interested in? Or why aren't you interested? And they have these confronting conversations, the prospect's already like, whoa, now you don't care about me. It's just like, when do you get paid? If you ask them, if somebody's like, well, right now the budgets are tight, and we're like, well, when are you going to get the budgets? You already indicated that you dropped the whole conversation because you're almost like, oh, now I don't care about the product helping you out. Your tonality was just like, well, when are the budgets going to come in? So now you just care about the wall. It's like, oh, now the salesperson needs me, right? Yeah. And I always say I think every great salesperson has the ability, number one, to understand what rapport is, because we've been taught that reports is just point of commonality. So if you like dogs, I like dogs. But I think rapport is a process of engagement, meaning you and I are having a back and forth conversation. You're out of rapport with somebody when you say one word and then somebody else splurges out a million other words, you're out of rapport. It's like, it's a heartbeat monitor and you talk and they talk. That's good rapport. But when it's like this, it's dead rapport. That's the first thing. The second thing is there's something about this person that I just like, right? And I always say towards the end of a conversation, I think sales people have struggles staying in rapport because we've been taught that your cycle is report, build rapport, ask questions, present your product, deal with objections, close the deal out. But I think towards the end of a deal, you need to be in more rapport than ever. And if rapport is a process of engagement and somebody's saying there's something about this person that I like, I think when you're asking for money, when you're closing out a deal, those thoughts and emotions inside of their head should be going off higher. It should be more open than it is closed towards the end. But if you look at objections, if you could look at it like on a frequency, you will start to see the conversation starts to get closed. They'll be like, well, why? Well, what? And it starts having confronting language where I think the conversation should be so open and there should be a higher rapport in the end than there is in the beginning. Like the prospect should be saying inside of their head, wow, I love this person, which is like, oh, the person listens to me, etc. They should be saying all those things in their head towards that, not just in the beginning.
Yeah.
So we just have this like strict process we follow: build rapport, ask questions, which screws you up because at the end, when they're paying you money, should be the highest. Like they should be laughing when they're paying you money. They should be happy. They shouldn't be struggling and you're pressing them through a sale or whatever the case is. They should be laughing. Hey, what are the next steps? I'm super excited. Be thanking you, etc.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that seems like it's like a friendship that was built on the call. Correct. Or through the process.
Like you want to get it more open and not just open up. So, I always say if people understand the way people buy, sales is easy. When people try to understand sales becomes difficult.
Yeah, okay.
Because everybody's trying to understand the script and you don't understand how people buy. For example, it's like, if you understand that a prospect usually wants to get on a call and they don't want to buy anything, that's a prospect's job because we've always been a prospect. It's always shoulders up, I don't want to buy. If you understand that, your first thing is to always do what? Drop always the shoulders from your prospect. So if you understand that your prospect's job is, I want to get on a call, I want to get all the information from the home from Neel, but I don't want to buy nothing, but I want him to be my information provider. That's a prospect's job. So what do? If a smart salesperson understands how somebody buys, you give it to a prospect because that's the highest form of control. So if I were to have you on a phone call and let's just say I sat down with you and it's a listing appointment or whatever I'm selling, this water, whatever it is, I would say, hey, Neel, by the way, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate your time. I just want to, kind of better understand who you are and what you need. And, if I feel like I could service and support you, I'll definitely show you some product services, offers where we help people like yourself that are in the mortgage industry, find a good home that's the right fit for them. And whenever you are ready to transition, in your real estate career or whenever you're ready to buy a home, whenever we're selling, you could look at this over the next 6 to 12 months so you at least have the comparables and the prices and the products in the back of your pocket for the future whenever you're ready to make a decision. Now the prospect's saying, oh shit, I can come on this call, I could steal all the information, and I can leave the call. Because I said, hey, I want to ask you questions. You could take the information, leave the call. Now their shoulders are dropped so I can have a conversation with them because they don't feel like they have to make a decision throughout the end of the call. But when a salesperson doesn't understand that, they almost make a prospect feel claustrophobic. So they have one-worded answers to the prospect. Yeah, no, I make $6,000 here, there. And then you're trying to close. You're like, but closing's not working. But they weren't even open from the beginning of the conversation because they felt like they had to make a decision. But your job as a salesperson is just to open them up, get their pains and problems, solve them, and then close the product.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense. Like people are, I noticed this, they're like, they're even telling in the beginning of the call, like, here's what's going to happen. And then that process is putting the customer off. You know what I mean? Like they're telling them, hey, at the end of this call, we're going to decide whether we move forward. Well,
Correct.
they weren't ready to move forward to begin with.
Correct. Their job was to come in here and steal information.
Yes.
And then some other prospects, like, I mean, I think there's two states. It's like, you're not trying to figure out if the person's a red buyer or green buyer. To me, I just say either a prospect comes in, they're a little bit defensive, or a prospect comes in and they're going to hype you up a little bit and they're going to over embellish. Yeah. And they'll do that so you could show your cards, you could show the price quickly. They feel bad sometimes for, salespeople. Humans are humans, prospects feel bad sometimes for salespeople. That's why they say they don't want to ever tell you no. They're like, oh, well, I'll get the contract signed next week. It's just a human nature to feel bad that they don't want to tell somebody no. This is normal. So they'll almost overhype you up and they'll over embellish and be like, I can't wait to start. Yeah. And the salesperson thinks they have it in the bag. But I say, hey, prospects are good people. They're just like you and I. They just feel bad. So they almost don't know how to tell you no. This is just innate in their future. They're not programmed, like you said, to make a decision, yes or no. You rarely have a prospect say, no, I don't want to do it, but thank you so much for giving me the call.
Yeah, they always just tell you, they think about it and they go.
I'll think about it, or I can't wait to get started. That's like the overhyped buyer, right? But I just say people are good people. Like when they say I can't wait to get started, it's like sometimes, but they push it away till next Friday. The average sales rep thinks they have it in the bag, but I'm like, well, maybe they could just be overhyping you. Yeah. I say prospects are good people, right? They don't want to be rude to you, so that's why they go to. I did this concept on stage once. It was funny when I was trying to explain this on a stage. There was like 5,000 people. We were in LA, and I was telling them, I'm like, guys, sometimes they'll overhype you because they feel bad, so that they'll overhype you and then they'll ghost you. And as I'm explaining this concept, I started to pause and I started to stutter. And I'm like, oh shit, I forgot my lines. And everybody's watching. It's like 5,000 people. And I started being nervous. I started acting nervous. I was faking this out. And then I said, every single one of you guys in the crowd was thinking inside of your head, Daniel, get it together. Come on, you got your next lines. I'm like, you're good people in your heart. You care. In the beginning, when I walked up on here, you guys were judging my ass. Sales train me, bro. Yeah. Give me some information. And then I said halfway through, as I was saying that and I was pausing, you were like, come on, Daniel, you got it. I said, your prospects do the exact same thing. Your prospects are just good humans. They just don't want to make you feel bad. Like you guys looked at me and you were like on my team now almost, right? Yeah. So
one of my all-time favorite growth hacks in business and life has been to go to live events. This is exactly why I'm putting on the 4th annual Forward event in Las Vegas live with world-class speakers like Gary Vee, Christo, Phil Jones, and many other experts who have been on this podcast. And I actually have a really cool gift for you. Because you're listening to this podcast, and I know you're the exact type of person we want in the audience at Forward, I'm going to hook you up with something really special. Check the description below. There's a special link and a code just for you that's going to hook you up with a huge discount for this year's event. Now, this code's only going to work for the first 25 people, so it is first come, first serve. Check it out, and I hope to see you in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think like this is in real estate, mortgage, and then I've also even sold to people within these industries, like services that we offer. And I've noticed nobody's ever said they didn't want to work with me. It's always like
rarely hear no.
Never. Like almost like I think once in like maybe a decade. Honestly, it's that rare. But what they do say is all these things that are lies. They said buyers are liars. I always hear this. And so I think like this adversity or this like adversarial relationship between salespeople and the prospects is like, it's just bad for the whole thing. Like people need to just be in more like friendship and just build in rapport. And so I was thinking this, like, I've seen it happen so many times in all the industries I've looked at, real estate, mortgage, and then regular sales. And now I see it in all these other industries. So many people have the opportunity to make millions of dollars, right? I see it over and over. And, then there's other people who are just struggling. I see a lot of like, it's almost like it's not evenly distributed.
Right.
It's like the top people are making so much money. And then there's some people in the middle, I'm sure there's some distribution there, but a lot more people are just like struggling. And the same thing, we all have like similar IQs, we all have similar things. So like getting into like tactical things, once you've got the mindset stuff right, one of the things I noticed that I've done in the past and I'm trying to get out of, and I know a lot of salespeople do, is when you're in this meeting with the prospect, we talk too much. Like we're talking about the actual product, the services, the things we're going to be doing, maybe the market and the interest rates and all these things. Like you talk a lot about this, like sell the vacation or sell the outcome. So what's your advice to people who are just talking too much?
Yeah, I think, to me, sales is the ability to, seek to understand and not seek to reply. A lot of salespeople, they just seek to reply, meaning they ask a question just to ask their next question. And it's very wide communication. So sometimes they're not even talking too much. They're asking questions that were, number one, unasked questions. They were completely unrelated and unpredicated from the last person's response. So it's just like, what do you do? Why do you do it? How much are you guys making? And there's no deep communication. And I think the most beautiful thing to a prospect is, when you can go down a line of conversation and then tie it back and say, wait, Neel, I was about to talk about something that I had planned out for today, but you told me XYZ about 3 minutes ago. That was super important. Can we touch on that for 1 second? The prospect saying, oh shit, the person cares. Majority of salespeople don't do this because they seek just to reply to the next conversation. But it's, to me, sometimes right there's the sale. Like right there's the sale, because majority of people will never tie that back in. And your prospects are always thinking, is this guy following a script, etc.? Do they just have a process? But anything that's unscripted is almost sexy to a prospect. It's like when you watch the best comedians make their whole comedy show like it feels like it's unscripted when Kevin Hart's talking. It's like he's just pulling it out of his bum. But he's so scripted that he's like, man, I was just thinking while I was doing this as I was coming up here in the elevator, but he had that planned out.
It feels like improv.
Improv, right? And I think the best salespeople, number one, you can never tell somebody, because you've heard this probably your whole career too. People got to know, like, and trust you. And then I've always started to say myself, when I got in sales when I was 14, I heard that since I was 14. I said, okay, but what's this? Okay, the know thing, I guess that's pretty easy. You market and brand yourself, people know your ass. But then to trust you inside of a conversation, you're thinking about this because it makes sense. It's like people got to trust you to buy from you. But then you're thinking, like, what the heck is this trusting? Like, how do you get somebody to trust you within an hour? You're not their best friend. And to me, I think, number one, people like and trust people that show that they're listening, because the sexiest trait to a prospect, the reason why people are married to their husbands, their wives, they have good relationships with their friends, is because that person listens to them more than anybody else. That's why there's a high level of rapport. You're married to the person, you date the person, whatever the case is. But you can't tell somebody, hey, I've been listening to you, because that's a conscious thing. On a subconscious level, you could say that in a conversation without saying, hey, by the way, I'm listening to that. Like, you can't tell somebody a bad line from a salesperson. You know this. Hey, trust me, we're better than the other people. And it's like telling a girl, hey, trust me, I'm not like the other guys.
Yeah.
Like it almost like you're doing the negative. So I say, as a salesperson, if you're listening, you can use that as a sign of trust when you go present. So if I'm talking to you and let's just say, I don't know, you're a makeup artist and you're trying to transition into real estate. While I'm talking to you and I'm transitioning into the presentation, I could say, hey, by the way, Carol, would you like me to show you how you've been able to help, makeup artists like yourself use everything that you told me inside of the conversation prior to me going to present? The prospect starts to say, oh shit, the person's been listening to me. And I think that's what builds rapport inside of the conversation. It's like the subtle things where you show the prospect that you're listening to them rather than just following a script.
Yeah, and then that goes along this whole adage of like people buy based on emotion, not logic, right? So they're connecting with you. They feel like you're listening. So I think one thing, like you talked a lot about rapport, but one thing that comes up a lot in our industry is our product or service is very similar. Like I'll give you an example. In mortgage industry, we're all selling debt. Like, you know what I mean? It's like we're selling a loan, but like the rates could be very similar or whatever. And so you'll have people ask this question, or the salesperson wants to put this into the conversation. Why should you go with me versus my competitor?
Correct.
So should that be something that they should actively do as salespeople, or should that just be kind of embedded in the conversation?
No, I think, to me, whenever competition either arises, of course, we know never bash your competition, etc. I just think it's the prospects. Like the prospects, sometimes you got to understand, like the prospects are testers sometimes. And I don't think salespeople understand this. Like your top prospects will all be the top testers. They'll always ask questions. Like if I'm interviewing somebody, I'll be like, hey, listen, right now, we're just not hiring, but I'm hiring. But I just want the person to see how they're going to respond. If they say, oh, okay, well, when you guys hiring? I said, well, why did you give up so quickly, right? So I say your prospects do the same thing. They just test you. They want to see sometimes how you're going to talk about the competition to see if you're ethical and trust, because that's right there. The thing, again, back to ethics and trust. Let's see how this person talks about their competition, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a salesperson, your ability to stay focused on the results that you helped, just like your current prospect right now, maybe in the past, I think that's what a great salesperson does. Hey, by the way, I don't know exactly what Jill, Bob, and Margaret down the street do, but the only reason why people partner up with us is because of X, Y, Z, or any of those things on your priority list when you're looking for a new mortgage. Yeah. It's keeping control of the conversation. Majority of people, again, it's the prospect's job is to get everything by nothing. Your job is to ask questions, sell something. Somebody's following somebody's script here, right? the prospect's always going to try to take you off the script. They're going to go early on. Why should I pick you? Can you tell me the prices very quickly? You know, they're going to try to, you know, power drive through the sale. And the balance between somebody that's great and somebody that's average, the person that's great makes the prospect always feel that they're in control. They never bash the prospect. They always make it feel like the ball's in their court. However, they manufacture the whole situation. So if you were to ask me, hey, what are the prices? Hey, you know what? I'm glad, Neel, obviously then you know about mortgages. I don't have to get into this conversation with you for 30 minutes and educate you about mortgages. So I'm going to fire you off the price and the quote right away. Let me just ask you 1 or 2 quick questions and I'll fire it off to you rather than spending 35 minutes to get you off the pricing. That's so simple because I just gave the ball inside of your court saying, yeah, I'll get you off the prices. I still got a script to follow here. I still need to know what but other salespeople, what differentiates other salespeople, you will always see that they're arguing. They'll be like, well, honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell you that right now. Boom, they're in argument mode. Yeah. They don't even know, but they're in argument mode. So the frequency of the conversation's off, or they would be like, there's only 2 ways to respond to that on the average side is, I can't do that right now. You don't even know.
I don't have enough information.
I don't have enough information. Yeah. It's already like, you don't know, but you're losing the prospect's attention. A smart salesperson is just giving it to the prospect. You know, they're just like, you know what? They're smart with it and they say, hey, you know what? It seems like you already know about the mortgage industry. Yeah. I was going to talk for an hour and a half. That's playing toward your side. And the other people just give off the price and they lose it because they don't have enough information.
Yeah,
right?
That's huge. I think this is for every industry, no matter what you're selling. In mortgage, it applies to people just calling you and saying, hey, what's your rate?
Right.
You're like, wait a second. And then the response is always like, dude, I need your credit score. I need this and this. Yeah. I can't just give you a rate. And anybody who does that is bad.
Right.
And you're like, now all of a sudden you're butting heads.
So people are always like, well, what do I do though? Like when somebody asks like, what's the rate? It's like, well, first just monitor your heartbeat. Because I think anybody that's untrained inside of sales, their heartbeat always goes high. I was just saying this to a team yesterday. I'm like, guys, I made everybody raise their hand. It was an insurance team. We were down in Fresno, California. I said, guys, how many people here want to make 7 figures a year inside of sales? Of course, the whole everybody's hands go up. I say, okay, cool. Pause for 2 minutes. I got off the stage. I'm like, all right, I don't have the money. And I started role playing with them. I'm like, somebody deal with it. And everybody was quiet. And I said, okay, so you guys wanted to make 7 figures, but then when we started role playing, you guys got scared. I said, guys, you have to judge your career based off how you feel when somebody gives you an objection. And to me, it showed you guys that you weren't trained, you weren't calm, you weren't cool, you weren't collective. So you're always going to try to run away from it. And I said, why did I get off the stage with I looked like a child with candy and when I talked about objections? Because I was calm, cool, and collective, and I trained on it. So I said, a lot of people, you just got to monitor when an objection comes in. Like, how do you feel in your heart? Like, are you praying and wishing they don't ask you the hard questions? Are you praying and hoping they say, I don't do things like this, or I don't make decisions this fast, or send me over some information? Like, if you're doing that, it's almost like you're trying to run away from the reality. You don't want to solve their problems. Inside of business, you solve problems, you get paid. Inside of sales, you solve your objections, you get paid, right? Yep. So if somebody just knows that, you would want to lean into it and almost get excited when somebody says like, hey, listen, I just need a quote fast. It's like, it's part of the game. Like it should get you excited. You'd be like, oh, it's this customer. And then you could just smile, be like, hey, you know what? Let me get that out to you. Like, it's just that easy. It's that simple. But people are like, no, it's that easy. Somebody asks you, hey, let me get that out to you. Let me ask you 1 or 2 quick questions. I'm going to fire you off a quote. Yeah, your 1 or 2 can turn into 10 to 15 questions if they need to, if they're a qualified prospect, right?
Yeah, and then you could guide the conversation from there.
It's just exactly. It's how you feel. Like the moment it comes in, you just never argue. And you could see somebody that acknowledges an objection, that means they're trained, or you could see somebody that argues with an objection, means they're untrained. Like acknowledgement just means, okay, I understand. 100%. You're just acknowledging them out, right? So
yeah, I think I've had this issue come up a lot, and I'm glad you touched on this, because what happens is, I'll give you an example. We were selling like a workshop, right, where we teach people in the industry how to do X, Y, and Z. It's like life-changing from the feedback that we get. Also, when people are there, we always over-deliver. So like if I'm selling it for, say, $10,000, I believe it's worth $50,000 or $100,000. So when somebody jumps on the call, a lot of times people are like learning about it and they love it and everything, and it's great. It's a great conversation, and they move forward and they enroll. But then once in a while, we'll get a call from somebody and they'll say, hey, so what's the price? Like, I saw the ad, like, what's the price? Or I saw the post, how much does that cost? Like, wait a second. Like, all of a sudden, what I start thinking of is, first thing I think is this person's cheap ass, which is wrong. I shouldn't think that.
Right.
But then I think, I want to tell them all the great things about this, why it's not, why it's worth way more than what we sell it for, and start like justifying. And so I think like that's because like my heart rate's going up.
Correct.
Just because they asked me what's the price.
Because they asked what's the price. So it's like,
like, why did I take offense to that? I don't know.
Because they're just there's trained responses that a human being has. It's just trained response. It's like if a guy goes up to a girl, her first trained response when she's just not interested in dating right now is I have a boyfriend, even though she might not have a boyfriend, or sorry, I'm not interested, or whatever the case. It's just a trained response, right?
Yeah.
Just human beings have trained responses. As prospects, we are prospects. I always tell my salespeople this. I said, you're a prospect. You do everything a prospect does to you, or you've done it before to somebody. You've asked what the price is. You've ghosted somebody. You've been defensive. It's just trained. You've walked inside of a mall. Somebody came up to you. They said, what are you looking for? You said, no, thank you. I'm just shopping. And then they walk away. It's just a trained response, right? And then I always tell the person in the mall, I'm like, listen, you're going through sales insanity. You're saying the same thing and you're hearing the same thing from your customers. You're going through sales insanity. You're actually bringing up my response. So that's not even my fault now. It's you've triggered my response. I didn't even say it first to you. You said it first to me. Sometimes salespeople don't know that they do that. They say something that triggers a response from a customer saying, no, thank you, I'm not interested. I said, you could have told me you like my ears and I would have responded better. Like I could have walked inside of a store and the salesperson can say, hey, by the way, literally as the stupidest thing in the world, I like your nose. The person would have been like, what do you mean? You're even 10 times ahead of then, are you looking for anything today, sir? Right? Because you know what that response that's going to get you. So as I said, I always said, understand how people buy. Because when you understand that prospects are stealers, I always say, like when you understand they want to come in here and get everything, it's a fun game because it's your job to lead them.
Yeah.
Prospects come in here, they don't tell you this, but they're like, hey, if somebody comes in a program, they're saying, I need somebody to lead me because I'm freaking confused and I don't need to lead myself. But salespeople, somehow they diminish that out of their head when a prospect comes on a call. They put themselves under postured on a prospecting call. So when a prospect comes in and they're like, hey, what's the price? They automatically start defending and they lose that leadership position where they're like, the person's lost. That's why they booked a call. Nobody books a call anymore. And by the way, sales has completely changed even in the last 3 years. You could say sales has changed in the last 30 years, right? But, people are people. It's just the attention span. It's like TikTok brain. It's like, the attention span's a lot shorter. Like if we were to go to our reels right now and we were to look at our reels, I always do this example. And you go back to your Instagram and let's just go, I don't know, one of my last reels. I go to view insights. I've never done this before. But if somebody goes to look at the reels and they're in sales, check out this reel. This was the last one. This last one had 127 hours of watch time. The average watch time, so you think you're cool. You're like, 100,000 people viewed it, 127 hours. Yeah, but the average watch time was 8 seconds. And that reel was 35 seconds, which essentially shows you, and I try to make my reels as captivating as possible. I'm yelling, I'm making a joke, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that just goes to show you the short attention span of a consumer. It's an 8-second attention span of a consumer. Now you got
that's if you're really good.
That's if you're good.
Yeah.
My reels are so captivating inside of sales. I try to make sales the funnest thing because some people make it so boring. So I try to make these funny jokes, etc. And then I say, man, if they only give you 8 to 10 seconds on Instagram, we know that. Instagram, TikTok, and it gets shorter because of TikTok. Before people would watch for 30 seconds. I say, if you got somebody on a call booking a 15-minute call with you, their life is fucked up.
Yeah.
Like as simple as it is, there's something in their life that's messed up because they booked a 15-minute call with you. Something, I always say, if somebody shows up to an event, they're there for a reason because in today's day and age, they don't watch you on Instagram for 15 seconds. So I always treat it with so much respect. Even if somebody says, hey man, what's the price right away? But they booked a 30-minute call. I'm like, listen, they don't even watch me on Instagram for 30 minutes. So something inside of them is like, hey, lead me better than I can lead myself, but I'm a little bit scared. So I'm going to ask for the price right away.
Yeah.
Right.
The fact that they just showed up.
Yeah. The fact that somebody's showing up to a call.
That's a huge
like
bar.
when somebody shows up to an event in person, to me, it's worth $1 million. That's why I like doing the in-person events. Cause I'm like, listen, it's a lot more dedication to take a flight, show up, etc. Right.
Yeah.
Shows that they're that much more dedicated. Anybody can watch a Zoom call now.
And I can tell you that from personal experience, getting people to show up to live events is tough. Like a lot of people are like, yo, I'm doing this event. If I build it, they will come. Well, I found out nobody comes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to really.
Today more than ever.
Yeah, because
it's
there's so much.
changed the dynamic.
Yeah, there's so many events, so many
events. And not just that there's so many events, is that there's so much content. So the human's just thinking, why the heck would I show up to Daniel G's event when I could just watch Daniel G on YouTube?
Yeah.
Or when I could just watch 100 videos on YouTube. So like what you're trying now to sell is culture and community, what we just talked about. Because like you can almost like content is great, but it's not culture and community. You can't really show up to an event. You can't get the breakthrough as you do sometimes as you watch content because it's not in person. So I always say like even now getting people to show up to an event has just changed within the last 3 years just because of the content distribution, the content saturation. People are just like, well, I'll watch it virtually, right? And I know this from running my own events and I speak at events every single weekend. I see the struggles where people are saying like, hey man, we're going to pack out this house. There's going to be 1,000 people. And then I start seeing the way they promote and market it. I say, okay, well, what's your influence? And if not, are you running heavy ads? Because if you don't have a strong community, you better be running your ass off with ads, and you better have a team. And now I think it's almost like both. Like if you look at the tactics from events, when I'm selling an event right now, I got 25 channels wide, like 15 channels on the back end, 10 on the front end. Some of the ones on the back end are ads, funnels, etc., with salespeople, calling back, with a sales process where somebody buys one, nurturing them, calling them back in 30 days, upselling them a ticket, putting that ticket to somebody else. Like it's not like before where you could just host an event. There's so much more work behind the scenes. When we see big people, like you were just mentioning before this podcast, sell events, they got a lot of strategy and a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And no, you can't trick that. A lot of people are trying to think, it's because of his brand. No, but they got strategy and they got teams that help out with that strategy. Yeah. You can't do it alone anymore. You need teams and strategy.
Yeah, I think we could do a separate pod just on event strategy, because I've just gotten into it in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that nobody comes. I signed up like Gary Vee and all these people to come speak.
Yeah, you think they're going to sell tickets? Yeah.
They don't sell tickets. Like somebody would share.
No, speakers don't sell tickets.
No. And so what's crazy to me is that, everyone markets the speakers.
Right.
So like if anybody's watching this or listening and you're like, and then you're off the chance you're trying to fill an event, like to me, the biggest thing I did that helped me fill events is sell what it's going to feel like in the room.
The value, the emotions, etc.
Exactly. So more like the crowd is like the person sitting here could be more valuable than the thing you learn from the stage.
Correct.
You got to come for the network.
Yeah. The rub shoulders, person left and right of you, etc. The people, listen, it's not that the speakers are
it's necessary.
Yeah, because it's the draw in that it's like it's a cherry on top.
Yeah.
But it ain't going to sell your event. Before it would. I'm telling you, 5 years ago, this was different. The speakers that we see now when we share stages with, 5 years ago, if they were on a flyer, people would show up. They would show up 5 years ago. I'm saying 2018, 2019, before the coaching space and the business space got so saturated online. When I first started, any big name at an event, people would show up. You say a big name because there wasn't many. There was only 10 to 20 big names back then.
Yep.
So, people would show up to the event, but then they start to say, well, I can just watch this person's podcast, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Even selling an event, I always say, I like when people are, in business and they start learning how to put on their own events, and they start with virtual workshops and they start with in-person workshops, because it teaches you how creative you have to be when you sell virtual workshops and events. That's like real sales now, because like you got to get creative in your marketing, because your marketing message has to like keep fresh every single week. And if your event's 6 months out, it challenges you as a brander and a marketer and a salesperson to constantly like engage people with a new message, how to sell a speaker. Like, how are you selling the speaker? Because the speaker ain't going to sell itself on the flyer.
Yeah. 100%.
Like how are you selling the speaker throughout the next, when we see people have events and their events a year down the road, we're like, oh, they have so much time to sell. That's why they sold out the event. It's actually hard, because you got to keep somebody's attention for 12 months. You got to switch up your message so you don't exhaust your current people, right? Because your current people already bought a ticket. And then you also got the fact of how you're going to convince the people that are already bought a year ago to show up. Exactly.
There's like a show rate. I didn't realize this. There was 20-30% of people bought tickets, didn't even come.
Yeah.
Some of them bought expensive tickets.
That's good.
And they didn't even show up.
70% show rate's good.
Yeah. So
that's good. Like some people are experiencing right now, and you were between 40 and 50.
That's terrible. Yeah.
They would sell 1,500 would show up. Right.
Yeah. So it's like keeping the hype up for a guy who bought a ticket 90 days ago to show up. So I think like people think we're talking about big events and that only applies to them. Well, you could also apply this to, you're hosting a workshop for people to come learn about how to buy their first rental property. You're hosting a workshop for business partners, so you can teach them marketing, so that way you can get business from them. Like,
or
it doesn't
just
matter.
Sales though.
Yeah.
Like even if you have somebody that's, let's say you had a conversation with somebody, and then, a month out, they're like, hey, I'm ready to buy in a month out. The question is, how do you keep that person engaged for a whole month where you're not pushy, you're not pressuring, they don't feel like you need them, and they buy actually a month out? Because regardless, I always say this, okay, let's say the objections are true inside of sales. I don't have the money, right? Right now it's not in the budget, etc. And let's say we found the bare naked truth of the objection, and the objection stands true, and you can't do nothing on that call, right? You've done enough attempts on the call. Now fortune comes in the follow-up. I always say fortune's in the amount of attempts. Then after, fortune's in the follow-up after you haven't attempted a few times on a call. But the objection stands true in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The question now becomes this. In the next 2 to 3 weeks, when the budgets do come, do they want to spend it with you?
Yeah.
Because they're going to get the money regardless. Say you sell a $5,000 product. The question's never money. Even if the client's broke right now, they're tapped out on the credit cards, they can't take a loan, etc. Well, eventually they will have $5,000, right? They will have the money. They will figure it out in the next 30, 60 days. Now, the question is, do they spend it with you? Do they go spend it on a pool? Do they go spend it at the club? How are you good at keeping them engaged? Is your branding good? Is your messages good? Is your value good? So when the 30 days come, because the 30 days is going to come, are they decisive on your product and do they want your product? Because the money's never the objection. Right?
Yeah, and this is also why people, like, it's such a terrible thing when someone gives up on that follow-up, because it's just timing. Like, I've had so many people connect with us. They buy 6 months later, sometimes a year later, even longer. And they're like, just wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
But you kept engaged,
Yeah, it's always I think like, you got to understand sometimes when people are a little bit more weak, I say when people are weak, they start to peak a little bit more. And when they start to peak, are you still a little bit engaged, right? It's just like you said, it's just sales is always just a timing game, because that's with marketing and branding. I think marketing and branding gets people discouraged because they don't understand that, marketing is a call to action. Branding is you're building trust with your audience. And sometimes we treat branding transactional, where we don't realize all we're doing is creating this trust factor. So when it is ready for the buyer to buy, I used to sell billboards. And I remember once this case was like just the epitome of how sales is timing. My first sales job, when I dropped out of college, I got back in sales. I was selling billboards in New York Times Square. I sold a client. I think it was a real estate client, actually. They were a big brokerage. And we put up one of their billboards in New York Times Square. They called me back after the contract was done. I think it was after 30 days. They had a short-term contract. They would get played every 30 days. Hey, by the way, we want to cancel it. We've seen some good impressions, et cetera, but we didn't hit at the exact ROI, et cetera. I said, well, there's a big thing coming around in New York Times Square. I'm trying to keep them engaged. Let's keep it going for another 30 days. Don't lock in for another 6 months. Let's do it for another 30 days. No. So we close it down. And I say, well, Daniel, success repeats itself. Just go call another brokerage. Call up a couple other brokerage. Hey, we had one of your competitors on the billboard, last week. So I sign another guy up. Man, the next day, the guy gets one of his biggest listings when he gets promoted in New York Times Square. We had a thing where we could track the leads, how it came in. I don't know if it was a QR code. He's like, bro, I just got one of my biggest developments. I can't remember what it was, but he made over $250,000 profit and only spent $35,000 on the billboard. I called the customer up, my old customer. I said, hey, a day when you quit, we put another billboard up there and somebody just got the biggest listing. So you never know, you quit right before the miracle happens inside a business,
100%.
It always works like
with
that.
the follow-up as well.
You're always one recruit, one follow-up away just for something to bang out in business.
100%, man. So I got two more things I want to wrap with, or I want to get to before we wrap. And one is being intentional. Okay. So you talk a lot about this. I say it's been the one reason why anything I do is good. Like, even like with this interview, I prepared. I want to be intentional with what we teach on this interview, and everything, events, calls, whatever. You're preparing for objections, all that kind of stuff. So you say it a different way, and I love the way you say it. You say, don't just do shit to say you did it. Like, don't just go through the call just to say you did the freaking call. And so can you talk about that? Because I think that is the differentiator between these guys who are making millions and the guys who are like literally struggling.
Yeah, you got somebody that's physically and mentally there, and then you just got somebody that's physically there. You got somebody that's knocking the doors, just say, oh, I knocked on doors. You got somebody that's knocking the door, and every single time they knock on the door, they're thinking, I'm going to close this person. I'm going to help this person. Somebody's mentally there. Like, you could be physically in your business, but your soul and your mental is completely checked out, right? So, it's like, did you make the call? Did you do the action with, first of all, the opening point of your mindset, which was, I'm somehow going to help this person. I'm somehow going to move the needle forward. I always say in sales, you can't think two thoughts at the same time. You can't think you're going to close a prospect or you're not going to close a prospect. You have to think of one. You have to walk it. You can never outperform what you think is about to happen inside of a sales conversation. So if you have a negative thought before the sales conversation or a disempowering belief, of course, you're going to go in there and you're going to have low energy, etc. So I always say, number one, monitor your belief system right before you go walk up into a sale. You can never outperform that thought. It's like if you're about to go up on stage and you're like, I don't know if these people need me. Well, you're not going to have high energy inside of sales or inside of training or whatever the case is. The second thing is, doing shit just to say you did shit. It's like, did you do it with the energy, the charisma, the backing, the intentions behind, you can actually help this person, or you're doing it just to say you did your numbers, just like social media. A lot of people do social media and they're like, well, man, I made the post. Well, you just made the freaking post. You didn't make the post and maybe, promote the post, or in the post, you're a little bit more energetic, or, share the post offer, do a giveaway with the post. It's like you're doing the thing just to say you did the thing. And it just goes back to, don't remember what book this was. It was like, just always go the extra mile. Like always push the extra mile. Whatever somebody's doing to the left and right of you, you do just the same and if not more inside of the business. That's it. You look to the left and right of you. How are people making these videos? How do we up them one bit? That's it. You just do a little bit more than the person left and right of you. I think that's the differentiator right there. People, every single point of conversation that they have, they delete everything and they're fully present inside of what they're doing. Meaning when they're doing a video, they're fully present. When they're inside of a conversation, they're fully present. They're not checked out. When you're fully present, you have the highest energy. A lot of people go inside of sales and they got so much baggage that they're thinking about that they can't even have a straight conversation. It's usually this stuff that cripples people inside of sales. It's not just the strategy. It's just that when you're inside of a sales conversation, the only thing you can think of is maybe paying your bills towards the end of the month and you're not even thinking about the prospect. So you don't have good energy because when you're not present, you don't have good energy. If I'm thinking right now inside of this podcast about what I have to do in the next 2 hours, sitting down with my accountant, how we fucked up on a couple of little things here, this podcast is messed, right? So I do have stuff to go do after that. But when I'm here, I'm like, okay, wait, this podcast needs good energy. The only way I'm allowed to have good energy is I'm fully locked in with you. So I got to walk inside of this room. And if it takes me another minute to sit in the car and be like, wait, give me a minute. I just got to delete everything. Like if it just takes that minute to reset, you do that before a call. You have to get into reset mode because I say it's like when you're in, you could see when you have the most energy is when you're the most present. A lot of salespeople are not present. You go inside of a conversation and you're at dinner with all your friends. You have low energy when everybody's on the phone. They're not present. The best dinners and the best lunches when the phones are tucked away and everybody's present with each other. The energy's high. Everybody's joking away. So I tell my salespeople, I say, guys, how do you always get to that point inside of sales where your mind is just fully disconnected? Because if you have faith that presence creates higher energy. Like if you could just hold that, it will probably solve a lot of the problems that you had anxiety before the sales conversation.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
100%.
Like if you just have faith that, having presence, increase your energy, close the deal. Closing a deal will solve the bullshit that you were thinking about before a conversation. That's what I think of. I'm like, listen, if I just do good here, universe is going to take care of me after that. Let me just focus the task in hand. Majority of salespeople, they focus on things that they can't control. You can't control a yes. But a lot of salespeople think of this towards like, man, you can't control a yes. All you could do is control having a good conversation, your objection handling, your mindset, etc. But you can never control the outcome. Yes. You can never control that. You can only control the controllables inside of business. But
yeah, I think so. That's a huge thing. And one thing I think in terms of a future opportunity for people in any business, and you know this really well, Daniel, because of network marketing. You speak to a lot of people in there, but it's very similar in other businesses. So here's what I noticed. Like in mortgage and real estate, you can get really good at your job and you can make a lot of money. When it changed for me was when I started to recruit, when I started to first build a team around me and then recruit other salespeople so I could help them and then take a little piece of their, product. But I'm really giving, it's a value exchange. And so I think for anybody in this industry who wants to get to the next level, they should just get really freaking good. And many of them are almost there or there, but then switch into recruiting.
Yeah.
Like you got to recruit. And so that's how I was able to exit like the rat race. I felt like I was on a treadmill.
Know the why though.
Yeah.
That's good that you just brought that up. Shit, I love that you just said the rat race. Cause as I was saying it, you just said it. I said, people got to know why it's important. Cause people are like, well, build a team, recruit people, have a team. The reason why is because I'll tell you the myths. And as some people would disagree, and then you're going to hear me out on this, it's we always thought money creates freedom, but it really doesn't. Because I didn't come from money. I started making money. And when I started making money inside of sales, if I make a $20,000 a month, I want to go to $40,000. Yeah. $40,000, I want to go to $60,000. But what are you still on? You're on the hamster wheel. So really, money doesn't create freedom. What creates freedom is when you can teach somebody else to do the job just as good as better as you, people create freedom. And that's what the masters in business know. They can leave their business and their business can grow without them. That's mastering business, where you can leave your business and your production grows without you. A lot of people that are inside of business right now, real estate or whatever the case is, if they go to Dubai for a month, their numbers and their tank, it will drop and it'll tank. Yeah. So I always say, yes, people are the end goal. Of course, right now you build your money, but you have to understand that recruiting and building is the end goal because it's truly and ultimately what gives you freedom. You want to drink tequila on the beach, you got to have people doing the job just as good or just as better of you. And every single industry that's like right now, I got inside of a new industry, which is coaching a business over the last 5 years in sales. Well, my goal, what do you think my goal is? I did it with my telephone sales company, scale out your business, have people on the phones, etc. Now inside of my business, what do I got to do? Find a freaking Daniel G, one of my sales guys, 2 of my sales guys, 3 of my sales guys, 100 of my salespeople to do the training just as good as me. If not, I'm doing this 24/7. Do I love doing it? 150%. But there might be a fork in the road where I want to pivot and do something, and I can never leave this because people are reliant just on Daniel G. right? There's masters inside of the space that we know that have franchised out their programs, etc. Where there's people that can do it just as good or even if not better than them. So I always say people create freedom. People create time. Time gives you leverage and freedom. So that's always the end goal. And I don't think you always, I just put an Instagram video out on this right now because I was speaking to network marketers. I'm like, you don't need multiple sources to become a millionaire. Sometimes you just need, if you're in sales, you have this one vehicle and you figure out multiple different ways to boost up this vehicle, which is one is people, meaning like multiple people, still one vehicle.
Yes.
People don't think about this. If you're in sales, I think a human being has so much more potential than a Bitcoin investment or a house. And I know my real estate people are going to hate this and you're in real estate, but if I were to build up a salesperson, to me, that's another source of income.
Yeah.
Like if we learn how to train and lead somebody to go out there,
these are assets.
It's more powerful than anything.
Yeah.
These are the people that build up the assets that people invest in. Assets are great when you already mastered your business. Everybody that's a millionaire has built multiple millions first in one source, and then have built up their millions in other sources. So I always say focus on people. It's a game. People are so much more powerful than any single investment inside of the world, especially if you're in sales. I'm having a sales conversation. When you're a sales manager, you want to focus on people. If you're in car sales, real estate sales, you want to build the brokerage big enough where people are doing more than you now inside of the business.
Yes.
That's
and then that gets you out of this rat race, off that treadmill. And then it also, incidentally, this happened for me, is it gives you a lot of fulfillment.
Yes.
So now when somebody on the sales team says, dude, what you went over today on the call, I tried it and I got this.
Yeah.
I'm like, that gives me more fulfillment than me closing a deal.
And it's a never ending cycle after.
Yeah.
Because that fulfillment's higher energy and you want to do it again.
Exactly.
And I say, guys, just wait till you have somebody come up to you and say, man, you changed my life.
Yeah.
That feeling, man, it's like, it's almost messed up because I'm in this loop where I can't get out of it now because I do so much. So I see so much, I hear so much. And the more events you do every single weekend, you hear, I get 100 DMs, 500 DMs a day. You change my life. And then you see it in person too. And that feeling is better than anything. So it's like, you can never stop
100%.
because it's on a loop and the snowball just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Right.
Yep.
So it's a very interesting game, but I always say, make your goal people, don't make your goal just money. Like, if I'm training like network marketers, even real estate reps, I'm like, grab a map and like throw the map on your wall. If I'm trying to teach people how to build out teams in different cities, a solar team, a network marketing team, I'm like, just go to Amazon, grab a freaking map, put it on the wall and put pins of where you want to go build a workshop, a team, or whatever the case is. And why am I doing that? Because I'm telling people, I'm like, if you were to put a pin on that map and you're like, I'm going to go do a workshop in San Diego and 5 people show up to San Diego, the next time you go and you're done, you put the pin there, you're like, shit, next time I want to go do 10 people. It felt good doing it. And I'm like, when people are the goal, it's never ending. Some people, because if 5 people show up in San Diego, you're going to be like, fuck, how do I make 10 show up, right?
Yep.
And, oh, that was good. People. But I'm like, people sometimes mess up on their goals because they make the goal a dead end goal, which is, hey, I'm going to make the goal a car. Yeah, but you get the car, then what? The energy's down. We know. We drove all the nice cars inside the world. You get the car, you're good for a week, you're done with the car. It's a dead end goal. A house, it's a dead end goal. Right? Yep. An office building, dead end goal. It's the people inside of the business that keep the goal because people keep the goal going on forever. When the goal is people, the fucking energy never dies. Yes. But I say sometimes people make the goal a dead end goal and they wonder why they're not motivated anymore and they hit burnout because it doesn't keep it exciting anymore. The car's not exciting. That was your goal. That's it. It's a burnout goal, right? And there's 2 reasons why people, I think, salespeople or business people burn out is because they strive towards the wrong thing or they just stopped recreating things inside of their mind that is exciting, like a vision or a new dream, because business gets so logical. Like they stop dreaming or stop having a big vision. Everything gets so logical. So I say your burnouts only exist because your business has become so logical, and the thing that drove your business, which was emotions and dreams, you probably stopped doing it.
It became all about the numbers.
And then you probably got to like reincorporate that into your business plan for 2024.
Yes.
Like reincorporate dreaming. As weird as that sounds, as we're adults, it's like put it inside of your business plan.
Yeah, and that's also why people get plateaus, I think, because the things that got you there, you just stop doing them. You know what I mean? Like it's huge. So I'll wrap with this. This was something that just kind of happened to me recently. And I know you've talked about this at different events and things. So I was speaking at this thing in Florida. Like this company brought me out to speak, and I've only been doing this like 4 or 5 years, like I was talking to you about, and they paid me to come out. Like a lot of things I do just for free and, within the community, or I'm building my brand. And I've been doing this for years, just grinding. And this company paid me $25,000 to come talk to their group. And I know people get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like I'm not flexing. Like I'm just saying like that was cool.
That's
to get,
massive. Yeah. 25 grand.
So it's like, it's not about the money. It's more like, okay, they value the time and they're flying you out. So speaking to the group, and then afterwards answer some questions, take some photos, cool. And then we leave. And the dude that was with us was like, dude, how much did they pay you for that? I told him, and he's like, that was so easy. You know what I mean? Like you got this money.
I was saying that once, right?
Yeah. So I don't know where you said this, but like I remember thinking like, dude, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
Like, I was literally doing web streams with 8 people on them. I hosted an event that nobody showed up to. I've been doing this for years to get to the point where now somebody will pay you.
Yeah.
And
even if it's $1,000 for 30 minutes.
Yeah. And so can you talk about that like really quick? Just, I know you're now at this place in your career and you're probably not even close to where you want to be.
No,
you know what I mean? You're just on the come up.
If it requires still me, because like I never get into fancy mode for me. Like, especially now in the last 2 years, like I've scrapped everything, man. Like everything. Like I got everything when I was younger, 24, 25, 26, nice office, nice cars, cool stuff inside of my life. And then I'm like, okay, in order to get to the next level, you're probably gonna have to kill some things inside of life because you're getting a little bit comfortable. And like I've scrapped everything to get to the next level. So of course, free events. So I was saying what I was getting to was even till today, even if I got to put in the work that doesn't make sense, like doesn't make sense to where I'm at right now. Like I don't got to do certain things. If somebody knows my business, they'll be like, that doesn't make sense. You can go make money here. A lot of the events that I do, it doesn't make sense. On paper, it doesn't make fucking sense to do the events. Like I do a lot of small events which I won't get paid a lot to do. I go to cities and countries that also don't have budgets to pay a lot of money for speakers. And last year I spent 6 months on the road, not in North America, but in Europe, South America. And there's some places can't afford a $50, $60, $100,000 keynote. Of course not. You're not getting it. And when everybody says this bullshit where they're like, oh, my keynote's $50,000, I also ask them a question. I said, well, how many times have you spoke this year? Probably not a lot. There's only very few people that are speaking consistently with a $50,000 keynote. You could say your keynote fee is $100,000. The question is, how many times have people booked you for $100,000? Like I'm in this space. I know where people are getting booked for. Nobody's booking the guy for $100,000. And if you're one of the top names, you're in that Tony Robbins bracket, you're getting $100,000 plus. Even when people are like, oh, my keynote fee is $10,000. Well, how many people are booking you for $10,000? If not, fuck, go do them for free. Are you really doing this for a keynote fee? Because that's an ego thing. Or are you doing it to train people, build your brand, etc. online? So to me, I love that you said that and you brought that up, that I made a video about that once when I'm like, yeah, somebody paid me, $45,000 to go speak on the stage, or $25,000, and a rep comes up to you and they're like, man, that must have been super freaking easy to do that. It's like, you're just speaking. And that situation has happened to me. He's like, dude, that was easy. And I told him, I looked at him, I'm like, dude, you never fucking called me in 17, 18, 19, 20, 20 when I did literally 200 free events, probably just like you, breaking your back on an airplane. I don't fucking like traveling. It's an airplane. It can only get so comfortable in an airplane. Even if you're on business class, it can only get so comfortable. And I said, you never came up to me and said those events were just fucking easy to do. I said, but that's sales. You will always be heavily paid for the shit that you were never paid for in the past that you did for free. It's not transactional, but I don't think a lot of people can get to that point because everything they do, especially when they start something new, they treat it transactional again. But if they go back to their old building blocks, they know their old building blocks were transactional. Like an athlete, it's totally not fucking transactional. An athlete gets heavily paid in the ending of their career when they're 25 to 30, when they're in the NFL, the MLB, the NBA, boom, they get a big paycheck. But just go look back at their 20 years. Their 20 years were completely like unpaid for. So I say in sales, you play to a game that's, you do a lot of shit for free till one day you're completely overpaid and you're heavily paid and it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. And I think as salespeople and entrepreneurs, that's the best feeling in the world. When it doesn't make sense to nobody else, but it makes sense inside of your own freaking head. Like you know all the years you've been doubting yourself, and then one day is like, hey bro, can 25,000 to speak. You're like, oh shit, what the heck? That feeling's better than anything. It's not the 25,000. Like somebody just gave me 25,000. I know those feelings inside of my head were the best, where somebody's like, hey, here's $60,000. I'm like, oh shit, I did these live streams. Like I did 5,000 live streams. That's why this guy's giving me, $60,000.
Yeah. You replied to everybody comments, or you went live on the way. Yeah. You went live on the way here today.
Oh yeah. I was on it. Yeah. So I just said, like all the unpaid shit, it's usually, and now it's something you also can't fake. That's why when we started off conversation, when we were like community and culture, I'm like, these things are so important because content will just, saturate everything. people will start to see what's real. Like, who cares? Even if it's like, you know, you can't fake branding. You can't fake it. It's like if somebody comes up to you and they say, hey, nice shoes, you know, you got to say thank you in life. But I say the same things inside of branding. If somebody comes on your video and they clap for you, and you're like, well, Daniel, I'm only getting 4 comments. Like, well, did you at least clap back to the 4? Because you in real life, if somebody says nice shoes, you would say thank you, or you look like an asshole. But sometimes inside of branding, we don't know that we're those assholes online where it's like, man, you know, I don't have a lot of people commenting on my shit. It's like, well, you're not even replying back to the current comments that you got. Yeah. How are you going to get 400 comments if you're not replying back to the 4 or whatever the case is?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, so.
It's just to put in the work from the beginning based on the people you have, like looking at what you have and making the most of it. Have,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think of this, there's so many different things you could do in your sales, in your marketing, and your branding. And it all comes back to just that word we talked about earlier, which is just being intentional. Yeah. Just like do it for real, man. Like put your heart into it and your soul, and people will see that connection. I think that's kind of what drew me to your content. Was I remember just seeing you pop up, and I wasn't following you, and I saw you at a couple other people's events, and then I just watched, you know, you go down the rabbit hole, you watch a few videos, and you're like, man, this guy's real. And so I think people can quickly identify that in literally minutes. And just connect with people, and then they're getting a lot better at identifying this than in the past. It used to be like, you know, everybody's kind of an influencer, right? And now people are being more selective with the people that
you think there's so much now where people are saying like, okay, well, let me pick and choose who to follow.
Yeah, right? So it's like they pick and choose what content to watch. So we said earlier, they're only giving us a few seconds of attention.
Correct.
But then they'll choose to listen to somebody's podcast for 90 minutes.
Correct.
They're just selective.
Yeah. That's why I love now. You know what I actually love now? Like I waited for the game to be where it's at right now, because a lot of what people would be like, oh, this is so hard to build. But then I say, okay, well, I haven't been in it forever. I've been creating content since 2017. And, you know, the shift was kind of beautiful because you've seen in 2018 to 2020, if you just showed off, you would get some clout online. Yeah. You show a Lamborghini, people would be like, oh, that's cool. Now nobody gives a fuck, right? It's like everybody can rent one. They get the game, right? And then I always wish and prayed that it would get to where it is right now, where people don't give a shit about what you have inside of your marketing, branding, and sales. They care about if you can help them get what you have. Yeah. Right. And to me, it's like, yes, I always played for this because I've always been the trainer. I've never been the cool, flashy guy. I enjoyed nice things, but there was a disconnect because I'm like, I like training people in sales and giving them value. So I'm like, fuck, now I love social media because people are like, really, what can you give me, bro? Because everybody has, you know, a nice car, or like now they see more people with more jets, etc. So the jet becomes saturated, right? So I'm like, this is such a good time to build a brand. If you're going to build a brand off real value, you will eventually stand out, because there's a lot of people that are just throwing out bullshit. So if you could solve real problems within your brand within itself can make people money without them paying you money. I think that's a super cool concept in my head, where I always say like, hey man, can somebody go through your brand? You can make them money without them ever paying you $1. You got a strong brand. I tell people, I'm like, hey, don't pay me a dime. Don't ever pay me in sales. Sometimes just go through my profiles and you can find tactics. And that's what I build my profile up for. I say, I'll give so much free shit that somebody's just like, well, I'll buy some stuff from Daniel, right? Yep. That's how I kind of like wiped out a lot of competition. I've realized like I will go on live streams every single day. I will go on my Instagram every single day, and I will literally give the free game on Instagram. Yep. And people inevitably buy from you, right?
Yeah, it's the trust.
Yeah, it's the trust.
The connection.
Yeah.
So I know you got a couple things coming up. One of them, so obviously if you're not following Daniel, make sure you follow him on IG, but I know you have an event coming up in Miami if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, March 30th. We have an event March 30th. I just dedicated a full sales event just with a lot of sales leaders, et cetera. A lot of people in network marketing, direct sales. Albert's coming out in real estate sales. And I wanted to have something where it's like we bring back, you know, sales is cool, it's sexy, it's important. Don't try to run away from it. Make it, you know, on your high priority of training. So we did a full day event March 30th in Miami. There's 12 speakers. You hang out from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. I packed the day in one day, this event. I didn't want to do 2 days. That event, I think Sunday is also Easter. So I tell people, I'm like, don't make an excuse. I said, because I have people saying, oh, you know, it's Easter. I'm like, listen, quitters can find any excuse to not win. A winner just finds a reason to win, right? Like you see it when you start running events. Everybody has excuses. I'm like, okay, great. That's your excuse. Fly in, fly out the same night. Yep. That's what you could do. You fly into Miami, you fly out of Miami, do an overnight flight at 9 p.m. You know what I mean? It's like, just go back home on a red-eye flight back home, so you're back home with your family on Easter. It's majority of people always find an excuse. Like, Right now I'm selling an event. I chose this event not to do virtual. It's just my choice this event because I said, fuck, man, if I do this gig virtual, I'm going to lose my whole international audience and I'm going to lose a big audience off of America that will not travel from Kentucky to Miami or whatever, Dallas to Miami. So I just chose not to do my event virtual. And then every DM is like, man, is the event virtual? Can I get a virtual ticket? And I say, holy fuck, how does this make sense that like you say you want something and then every single speaker that I called said, Daniel, I'm going to take a flight out to the event, and they're already multimillionaires. And then you have somebody in the DM saying, can you make the event virtual? Yeah. And I say, the problem is that we wipe people's bum and try to make it easier, where it's like, no, I got to do a better job telling these people a reason why it's important to show up. Because I can't complain to my audience. I can't say, you're an idiot. I got to say, shit, in my head, this doesn't make sense. Now I got to step into leadership position because I know it doesn't make sense because I'm on overnight flights 24/7. And if they say they want what you have and they're not willing to do it, then it's going to be impossible, even the best strategy that we give them, right? So then I just say to my head, I say, now I got to step into leadership position. Show people why it's important to show up to an event. And that's where I got into my leadership position, saying, okay, you can't have breakthroughs sometimes when it's virtual because you're not fully present. You're only fully present. Nobody can distract you. A cell phone can't go off. You're watching the person. So I had to, sell the reason why it's important to show up to an event.
Yep.
Right. So we got an in-person event, Miami, March 30th.
Yeah.
Ticket links are in my bio at Daniel G. That's it.
Yeah. Check it out. And
thanks, man.
I'll say this about the event. You just talked about why in person. When you go to an event, it's not just about like, oh, I could just watch this. Part of it is, yes, you could probably find all 12 speakers, find their content online and figure out something from each of them. You don't have to go to the event to know that.
Right.
But what you won't get unless you're in that seat is, I love traveling to an event because it gives you a chance to leave your current stuff. Like, so I've got family, I've got my kids' basketball game tonight, I've got some stress at work, the CPA is calling me for some bullshit. And I'm going to leave all that shit and I'm going to go to Miami. I'm going to sit in the chair.
Yeah.
And even if you're there for 8 hours or 2 days, whatever it is, it gives you a chance to listen and receive the information, but also reflect on your current situation. And that's why I think people have a change, because I've had that change in a live event, sitting in that chair, because you're in a position to receive the information and actually think about your life. Like if I'm on a live stream and I've got this and this and this, like it's not the same. You know what I mean? So I think that's the value of in-person events.
Yeah, you position yourself almost for a breakthrough.
Yes.
Like you got to like position yourself. Like maybe it'll hit or maybe it won't hit, but yeah, there's no distractions. You got your full undivided attention.
100%, man. So check it out. Thanks so much for being here, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool.